everybody. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 8 from The Biggest Story. The Biggest Story. Thank you for reading this with me. It's been a lot of fun to read this with you. If you remember at the end of Chapter 7, we were given this cliffhanger. It seemed like the enemy was winning, Satan was winning, until something happened. But it didn't tell us what. Do you know what it is? We're going to have to read Chapter 8 and find out. Are you ready? Awesome. After all these downs, and not too many ups, we come to a manger in the little town of Bethlehem. This is where we meet the new Adam, the child of Abraham, the son of David. It's with the stinky shepherds and the singing angels where we see the real deliverer, the real judge, the real conqueror. No one understood it completely at the time, but when Mary pushed out that baby, God pushed into the world the long-expected prophet, priest, and king. God gave his people a new law, a new temple, a new sacrifice. Best of all, he gave his people a new beginning, just as he promised. Of course, some things were different than people had expected. The stable with the animals and the scandal with unmarried Mary were surprises to most folks. The miracles were remarkable. The teaching was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. The bumbling band of hand-picked disciples? That was curious. How many disciples were there? You remember how many? But the biggest surprise to everyone was that the chosen one of God was chosen by God to die. It didn't just seem right that the one destined to crush the serpent would be crushed himself. So when Jesus, the Christ, the Son of the living God, died on the cross that Friday afternoon, it seemed a shocking evil beyond belief. And it was. The worst thing that's ever happened in the world. But it was also the best thing that's ever happened in the world, just as we would expect from God, and just as God planned it. We break promises, so God keeps his. We run from God, so he comes to us. We suffer for sin, so the Savior suffers for us. Our story is the story of God doing what we can't in order to make up for us doing what we shouldn't. Christ suffers for our sin, that we might share in his sinlessness. And so, deliverers are born to die. Things fall apart so they can come together. God kicks his own people out of paradise and then does whatever it takes to bring them back again. Is that what you expected was going to happen? Did you know already that God was going to send his son to rescue his people? I really like this page right here. You know what this stone is, right? It's a stone that was used to block the tomb that they buried Jesus in. And then here's the stone rolled away after Jesus rose from the dead. You know, this page is really neat because it talks about how we sin, but God still loves us and saves us. It says we break promises, right? Do you ever break your promises or not tell the truth? But guess what? God keeps his promises. It says we run from God. How do you run from God? Well, when you sin, or when you dishonor your parents, or when you choose not to pray or pay attention in church, we're running away. We're not obeying or honoring God. But guess what God does? It says he comes to us. When we try to hide from him, he comes and finds us. It says we suffer for sin. Because we sin, because we break God's rules, we have consequences in our lives. But guess what? The Savior suffers for us. We deserve God's judgment. We deserve to be punished by God. But because he loves us, he punishes his son so that we who deserve his punishment can be forgiven. Isn't that awesome? Thank you so much for reading this chapter with me. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to see what happens in the next few chapters. I love you, miss you, and read with you next time. Bye.